After Loska, the story leaves a red fire in the north and returns to a deeper darkness in Armen. Messengers bring the Noldor's passage before Manwë. Feanna's charge of idleness meets grief turning slowly toward counsel. The Valar answer rebellion first by asking what light can still be saved. The route ahead has 4 movements: flower and fruit, vessels, rising lights, hidden west. In that order, preservation comes before judgment. Yavanna and Nianna stand before the trees. Song, tears, growth, and pity are brought to the wounds. The wounds remain mortal, and the work has the hush of a final rite. Nianna's tears fall where silver and gold once lived. Yavanna's song searches the bark, and the last response of the trees gathers slowly into visible light. Then the last mercy of the trees appears. Telperion bears 1 silver flower, and Laurelin bears 1 golden fruit. The new lights are the final things the trees can still give. The sun and moon are born from that remaining wound. Before sunrise, Yavanna holds the last flower and fruit, while the whole future sky of Arda waits inside her hands. Yavanna takes the flower and fruit, and only then do the trees die. Tolkien gives the world 1 final act of living transfer before the old light passes away. She gives the last lights to Aulë, and the story turns from garden to forge. This is preservation under catastrophe, craft that holds radiance while the wound remains visible. Manwë hallows them, and Aule's people make vessels to contain them. Making and blessing occupy the same motion, workshop and ritual move together. The source names the song behind this making, the Narsillion, the Song of the Sun and Moon. The title sits like a painted rubric at the edge of the page. This making is sung before it is engineered. The vessels are crafted reliquaries given motion, carrying the final life of the trees into a sky bearing such a burden for the first time. The vessels are given to Varda, and their scale changes. They move beyond rescued remnants from a dead garden and become lamps of heaven, nearer to Arda than the ancient stars. Varda gives them courses through the lower airs of Ilmen, above the girdle of the earth. The movement is deliberate, from Armen into the east and back again, light traveling beyond the tree's own place. The scale expands as the tree's last light travels outward, over lands that had known mostly starlight, shadow, rumor, and fear. Grief is one reason for sending the vessels. Middle-earth is still dark, and Morgoth has returned to it. The Valar remember the Arvari, the elves who remained by the waters of their awakening, and they keep the exiled Noldor within their thought. The phrase leaves the Noldor guilty while keeping the scene from becoming simple abandonment. The exiles are guilty, and they are still within thought. There is another reason for restraint. Manwë knows the hour of men is near while their place of awakening remains hidden, and the Valar fear that a new war in Middle-earth might wound the younger children before they have even opened their eyes. So the Valar send light instead of armies. It is a limited mercy, but it is mercy with a horizon. Mountains have broken under the wars of the powers, and that memory restrains them. Light can cross sea, forest, and mountain, while Middle-earth is spared an immediate battlefield. The moon is named Isil, the sheen, the flower of Telperion. The sun is named Anna, the fire golden, the fruit of Laurelin. The Noldor also call them Rana and Vasa, and the names carry judgment inside beauty. The moon is wayward and keeps memory of the elves. The sun awakens and consumes, and it is set as a sign for men and for the waning of the firstborn. The world receives light and a new measure of time. The names also make the 2 vessels feel like characters rather than fixtures. One leans toward memory, dream, and wandering. The other brings waking, heat, growth, and the pressure of mortality. The moon is given to Tilion, a hunter from the company of Orome, carrying a silver bow and drawn always towards silver things. When he rests, he leaves the woods of Orome and lies in dream beside the pools of Este, under the flickering beams of Telperion. Tilion has already been living in the moon's memory. The sun is given to Arien, who tended Laurelin's golden flowers and refreshed them with its bright dew. Arien is mightier than Tilion through her nature, a spirit of fire, unhurt by the heats of Laurelin and free of Melka's service. When she leaves Valinor, she leaves behind the form she had worn there and becomes an unveiled flame too bright for even the Eldar to look upon. Tilion carries silver, dream, and wandering desire. Arien carries severe gold and unbearable holiness. The moon is made ready before the sun, and that order changes the emotional color of the new lights. For a while the world has moonlight before daylight. Under that first silver passage, things long waiting in the sleep of Yavanna begin to stir. The servants of Morgoth are amazed, but the elves of the outer lands look up in delight. At the same first rising, Fingolfin sounds his silver trumpets and begins his march into Middle-earth. The scene is stark, an exiled host crossing under the first moon, their shadows stretched long and black before them. The light that saves the world also exposes the shape of their road. The moonlit road carries the memory of Loska and the ice. These are the people left after oath, blood, fire, and ice. Moonlight gives them a road on which their courage and their bitterness can both be seen. Tilion crosses the heavens 7 times before the vessel of Arien is ready. The delay gives the first sun the force of an arrival, rather than a simple next step. Then Anna rises in glory, and the first dawn burns on the towers of the Pelori while the clouds of Middle-earth kindle. The source hears the scene as well as sees it, with the sound of many waterfalls in the new light. Water, stone, thaw, and brightness arrive together. The first sun is heard as well as seen. Morgoth is dismayed by the first daylight. He descends into the depths of Angband and hides his land under fumes and dark cloud, because the Daystar has made concealment necessary. Daylight immediately changes the military shape of the age. Morgoth remains unbeaten and newly exposed, forced to look like something that fears being seen. For the first time since his return, concealment becomes part of his rule. The smoke over Angband is a defensive answer to a brightness made beyond his command. Varda's first design is ordered and nearly ceremonial. The 2 vessels are to journey in Ilmen, each passing from Valinor into the east and returning in alternating measure. Tilion breaks that measure by moving waywardly in speed and drawing toward Arien. When he comes too near, the flame of Anna scorches him and the island of the moon is darkened. There is a second pressure on the design. Lorien and Este ask for sleep, rest, and the stars to remain on the earth. Varda changes her counsel in answer to that need. Shadow and half-light return, and by the coming and going of Anna, the days are reckoned after the long night. The new sky is therefore a compromise between fire, memory, desire, rest, and fear. That compromise keeps the new sky from becoming simple triumph. The sun and moon are sacred, but their motions still carry personality, petition, and damage. Even the sky enters history imperfectly. At the center, the sun and moon carry the last flower and fruit, while the old light of the trees lives now in the Silmarils alone. So the new lights are both immense and insufficient. They save the world from darkness, while the wound made by Anna, Morgoth, and Ungoliant remains. Cosmic beauty now meets the Silmaril story. The old light remains concentrated, stolen, and contested in 3 small things under Morgoth's crown. The new vessels save the world while leaving the jewels terrible. Morgoth hates the new lights, and when his first fear passes, he strikes at the weaker one. He sends spirits of shadow against Tilion in Ilmen beneath the paths of the stars. Tilion prevails, while Arien remains a terror beyond Morgoth's approach. The source makes the reason larger than cowardice. Morgoth has spent himself into lies, creatures, malice, and domination until his power is dispersed, and he is more bound to the earth than before. He hides himself and his servants from Arien under fumes and cloud. Evil remains, but daylight has changed its posture. That posture shapes the first age that follows. Morgoth can still wage war, breed fear, and command Angband, but he must now do those things under a light that exposes him as a fugitive from the very sky. The assault on Tilion makes the Valar fear what Morgoth may yet contrive, and they remember the ruin of Olmarin. They fortify Armen anew with mountain, watch, and guarded pass. The Pelori rise to sheer and dreadful heights, east, north, and south. Their outer sides are dark, smooth, steep, falling in hard precipices and crowned with white ice. Only the Calacuria remains as a pass, and even there the Valar set towers, sentinels, and a host. The pass remains open for the faithful Eldar still dwelling in Armen, and for the kinship still binding the Eldar and the Teleri. That detail leaves severity tangled with kinship. The hiding is severe, and its bonds remain emotionally complex. The pass remains because the Blessed Realm still holds faithful elves and kinship that reaches beyond punishment. Tolkien lets the defenses harden while keeping the West emotionally complex. Then the sea itself becomes part of the defense. The enchanted isles are set before Tol Eressëa, strung like a net in the shadowy seas. The sounds are weary, the rocks are misted, and those who set foot on the islands are trapped in sleep until the change of the world. Ordinary longing now finds mist, weariness, and enchanted sleep on the road to Valinor. The turn is complete. The light of Armen has gone out into the world, and Armen has hidden itself from the world it has lit. Middle-earth receives day as the western road fills with mist, weariness, and enchanted delay. Light goes out from Armen while Armen pulls its own threshold away. From this time, the years of the sun are reckoned. The Valar sit behind their mountains, and Middle-earth has light under a sky newly ordered from afar. Yet the source gives one exception. Ulmo keeps the exiles most in mind, gathering news of the earth through all waters. The old measure of the trees belongs to memory. The new measure belongs to Anna, and it is swifter, shorter, and mortal in feeling. The measure of the legend changes here. The years of the trees feel vast, ritual, and almost liturgical. The years of the sun move faster, and everything under them begins to grow, age, wither, and choose under a different pressure of time. At the first rising of the sun, far in the east of Middle-earth, the younger children awake in Hildorian. The first sun rises in the west, so the opening eyes of men turn westward. Their later wandering is already bent by the direction of that first light. They wake unsummoned and unguided beneath a world already wounded and already bright, and their first desire is toward a light whose home has just been hidden. Men begin by looking west, and the west has just withdrawn behind mountain and enchanted sea. Their first longing rises toward a hidden home of light. Under the new sun, Middle-earth changes quickly. Growth and mortality hasten, life teems in soil and water, and Beleriand grows green and fair in the second spring of ardor. Morgoth's power is checked by the sudden coming of great light, but he remains in Angband. The world remains wounded and visible. The greening of Beleriand is hopeful and still burdened. Streams run, leaves open, and the air grows heavy with life, while the Iron Crown still holds the older light in darkness. 3 lights remain held apart in this age. The moon moves with the memory of the elves, the sun rises over men, and the ancient light of the trees remains locked in the Silmarils on Morgoth's crown. After the long night, the world has light everywhere, wholeness nowhere, and the road of the First Age begins under a sky that remembers an unrestored garden.